Hey friends, welcome to English channel. You are with Ajay. Today we are going to discuss about literary ages. We will go from Old English period to the contemporary age. We will talk about every age and key facts about that particular age. So before going to start this video, let me tell you one thing that is very important, friends. Saurabh Upreti sir and I have written a book based on objective English literature. This book is really very helpful for NET JRF, SLAT, PhD, lecturer and LT exams. So friends, I will suggest to you to go for this book. This book will definitely help you to make your base. You will get the most important questions in this book as well as the explanation of the important questions. So you can contact us by calling. The contact numbers are given in the description box. You can directly call us. After getting your call or email, we will directly dispatch this book to your home address. So let's go for our topic today, literary ages. Very interesting chart is there in front of you, friends. You can see the Old English period. Old English period is also known as Anglo-Saxon period, as we know, which begins from 450 to 1066. The 1066 date is very important for our competitive exams, friends. As we know, the Norman conquest occurred in this time period, 1066. Remember it always, the Norman conquest. The next period is 1066 to 1500 is known as Middle English period, or this period can be divided into four parts. The first, Anglo-Norman, the second, Age of Chaucer, Baron Age, and of course early Renaissance or early Renaissance. Friends, Anglo-Norman, the time period of Anglo-Norman is 1066 to 1340 and 1340 to 1400, known as the Age of Chaucer, the great Geoffrey Chaucer, the Canterbury Tales, the magnum opus of the Geoffrey Chaucer, Canterbury Tales. Baroness. Baroness begins from 1400 to 1485. Friends, this time period, this age 1485 is the most important date in English literature because we see the uh, the time period, the Motet d'Arthur, the first poetic prose or poetic romance, Motet d'Arthur by Mallory, came in 1485. The end of War of Roses can be seen in 1485. So this age becomes very important as the Tudor dynasty also begins from this particular age. So we should definitely remember this age also. Then begins the early Renaissance. Early Renaissance 1485 to 1557. As the 1557, this date also becomes very important because the anthology of sonnets came into existence, the Total's Miscellany. Richard Total's Miscellany, the anthology in which Wyatt and Surrey's the Earl of Surrey. The sonnets of Wyatt and Earl of Surrey came in this particular anthology published by Richard Total in 1557. Then begins the Renaissance or early modern in 1500 to 1660. So friends, remember this time period. The Renaissance, early modern. This age can be divided into four parts: 1558 to 1603. Of course, Elizabethan age. The Queen Elizabeth, as we know, the great Queen Elizabeth, the greatest writer, William Shakespeare, Marlowe. There are so many writers in this particular age. So Dr. Faustus by Marlowe, as we know, the great dramatist William Shakespeare has written 37 plays and 154 sonnets. So this age becomes really very important for English literature. We should remember the time period. The next 1603 to 1625, friends, of course, begins the Jacobean age. So in this time period, as we see, the uh, Ben Jonson, of course, Webster, and the other dramatists also are there in this particular age. King James Bible in 1611 is the most important prose of this particular age. After this age comes the Caroline age. The Cavalier poets are there in this time period, 1625 to 1649. Of course, this age becomes really very important also because the Cavalier poets are there. After the Caroline age, we see 1649 to 1660 Commonwealth period or Puritan interregnum, Great Milton. The age is also known as the age of Milton, the Paradise Lost, Samson Agonis, and of course the Paradise Regained, Comus. So on his blindness, there are so many works of John Milton which created, of course, which created the route map for the further upcoming poets and writers. After this period comes the neoclassical period, 1660 to 1785. So this age is also divided into three parts. 1660, of course, the age of Dryden, uh, the age of Restoration, the restoration of Charles II, King Charles II. The monarchy begins or began. The monarchy began in 1660 or 1660 to 1700. The age, therefore, this age is called Restoration age, the restoration of King Charles II. So the second 1700 to 1744, the age of Pope or the Augustan age, the age of revival of classical poetry. In this age, the great Alexander Pope, of course, the Rape of the Lock, and we see the other important writers in this age also. The age of, we see that the revival of classical poetry in the form of we see the closed couplet of Alexander Pope. So the next one 1744 to 1784, the age of sensibility, also called the age of Johnson, Dr. Johnson, as we know, the great Dr. Johnson. The first English dictionary, 1755. Remember this, friends? The first English dictionary came in 1755 by Dr. Johnson. Rasselas, the Prince of Abyssinia. The Rasselas is the poem written by Dr. Johnson to pay the debt of his mother's funeral. So in this age, we see so many writers like Goldsmith and Boswell. Of course, Boswell, the biographer of Dr. Johnson, is also very famous. Famous biographers, and the most important work of Dr. Johnson can be seen as the biographies. He is also known as the lexicographer. So, friends, this becomes very important. The lives of poets, 52 biographies of poets written by Dr. Johnson. So overall, this age becomes very important as we see the works of Dr. Johnson and other writers are there. And after this age comes the Romantic period, of course, the lyrical ballet. We remember, friends, in 1798, after the publication of lyrical ballet, we see the Romantic period begins. In this age, we see the lake poets, the first generation poets, the second generation poets, lake poets like William Wordsworth, Coleridge, Sadie, Byron, Keats. So these are the writers, famous writers. As we know, the great writer John Keats, known for his Endymion and his ode. His odes are also very famous. Of course, lyrical ballet. So the Romantic period becomes really very important. We should definitely go in detail of this period. And uh, after this video, you will definitely get regularly the representative writers of the particular ages. We will begin a series of this particular age. So friends, next, 1837 to 1901, known as the Victorian age, the great Queen Victoria. As we see, this age can be divided into two parts. The age of Tennyson. Of course, Tennyson is known for his poet laureateship, and In Memoriam, Locksley Hall, The Idylls of the King. There are so many works written by Lord Tennyson. So his time period is 1837 to 1871, and after 1871 to 1901, known as the age of Hardy or aestheticism, decadence. Of course, we know friends, the age of Hardy or aestheticism, the great Walter Pater at the great aesthetic. So in this period, we see Thomas Hardy, Walter Pater, and of course so many writers are there. And this particular time period, remember, the 1891 to 1900 is known as naughty 90s. This becomes a really very important, this figure, or this decade, of course, often asked in exams. So which period is known as naughty 90s? So we remember 1891 to 1900. So after this comes the Edwardian age, 1901 to 1914. The Des Imagistes of Ezra Pound, published in 1914. So remember this, friends. So this period becomes really very important, the Edwardian period. After the Edwardian period, we see the Georgian period. Of course, war poets, Wilfred Owen, Siegfried Sassoon, and Robert Bridges. There are so many writers in this age. So 1910 to 1936, known as the Georgian period. And then comes the modern period. Modern period is basically said to have begun from 1922, after the publication of The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot and James Joyce, Ulysses. So the great modern period begins from, of course, here written 1914, and we also see the beginning of modern period after the publication of The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot in 1922. That ends in 1945. Of course, 1945, the beginning of the Second World War. So this becomes also very important. There are so many writers like D.H. Lawrence, Hilda Doolittle, James Joyce, of course Joseph Conrad, E.M. Foster. There are so many writers in this period. The postmodern era comes from 1945 to 1965. Of course, the postmodern era, the movement poets like Philip Larkin, Tom Gunn, and of course Angry Young Man, the absurd theater. We see so many development in literature, like in poetry and prose, of course, and drama also. So then comes the 1965 onwards, the contemporary period. This period is also very important, friends. 1965 to till date is known as contemporary period. So if you like the video, please do like, comment, share and subscribe. Thank you for watching.